It was February 2018. And I was like so many other working moms out there. My husband worked out of town, so I was the only one. I was the only one to take my kids to doctor's appointments, dental appointments, pick up and drop off at school, not in that order. um, I took them to extracurricular activities. I ran the household and I was an entrepreneur of 15 years. I was amazing at what I did, and I had a 3-month waiting list. But I was like so many other moms. I needed a break. And the only way that I got a break was if I scheduled continuing education. I loved my life. I didn't want to change it, but I was wishing that somehow it would be easier. I loved my life, but I was like so many other moms and working women out there where if I could just have a break, I'd be even better. February 3rd came, and I was supposed to be going to Fort McMurray with our daughter, but Edmonton had just had a massive snowstorm, and I was worried about the roads. I told my husband Mike this, and he said, Jody, you're fine. The roads are dry and clear. Now, Mike was a manager of a trucking company. He was not worried. He assessed roads all the time. He also knew my driving capabilities and he had full confidence in me. I decided to put my marriage first, like a good wife would. And Marley and I got into the car and we proceeded to drive to Fort McMurray. We called Mike, told him that we were on our way, and Marley, so excited like 4-year-old little girls do, is like, Daddy, are you super excited to see your favorite 4-year-old little girl? He replied, I sure am, sweetheart. And they ended the conversation by telling each other that they loved one another. Afterwards, Marley was so excited. She was wiggling and giggling in her seat, like 4-year-olds do, because she had a surprise for him. You see, she was wearing overalls. And Marley was a girly girl, and Daddy loved overalls. But overalls, they were for boys. But we had taken her shopping for new clothes, and she loved this pair. So she was going to surprise him. That is the last thing that I remember of that drive. The next thing I knew, I was leaning over to my left, hunched over the steering wheel, knowing not to move. Inside, I thought, I can't hear Marley. I don't know how she is. I can't hear Marley. I heard a man's voice and I said, call my husband. Call my husband. Now, I must have given the man his phone number because I heard Mike's voice and I said, Mike, is it Saturday? Yes, it is, sweetheart. Were we coming to see you? Yes, you were, honey. Mike, I can't hear Marley. I don't know how she is. I can't hear Marley. That was the last thing I remember from that day. I remember waking up. I was intubated, neck collar, and my hands were tied so I wouldn't pull out my tubes. They would untie my hand and I would write, Mike, Marley, sister. I got all the answers except for Marley. Mike, girls, Marley. I got all the answers except for Marley. Finally, on the third day, I wrote Marley, and that is when it was decided that I be told. Mike lovingly sat beside me. He couldn't even touch me because I could feel the vibration of the breathing, even if he were to just touch the hospital bed. He shared with me that our little girl had died instantly on the impact. I asked if it was my fault, and he adamantly said no. The other driver had come into the other lane, hitting us head on. They told me that I would be in the hospital for 10 months recovering. I told them they were wrong. I mean, I was a massage therapist. I had clients with knee and hip replacements, and they were fine after 6 weeks. I was going to be walking. I was on 76 milligrams of opioids. I was on ketamine. I was on antipsychotics and nerve blockers. I had no proper understanding of what was done to me, but I knew one thing. I was not going to be away from the other girls for 10 months. So 1 week after the collision, it took 6 people to move me, but I moved. You see, I knew since being in the alternative field since 1996 that the body heals within motion. And if I didn't move, I wasn't going to get better. I transferred in and out of the wheelchair twice a day through screams, through sweat and tears. I was transferring so well that after 1 month, they moved me to the Glenrose in Edmonton, which is one of the best rehabilitation hospitals. And there I started physiotherapy every single day of the week, except for Saturdays and Sundays. I implemented everything I knew about nutrition, about movement, about somatics, about energy healing, and I applied it and I became my best client. It didn't take me 10 months to get out of the hospital. It took me 4. When I got out, I knew the stats were, and 80% of clients regress because they do not continue their therapies. I implemented rehabilitation yoga and rehabilitation TRX once I was out of the hospital. Plus, I continued 5 days a week for physiotherapy. After 1 year of recovery, I now had a cane, and I was finally understanding that I would never go back to massage therapy full-time or part-time. I was competitively unemployable. So I decided to retrain, where I could implement everything I knew from 1996 to 2019 into a new career. And I became a certified health and life coach. 2 years after that, I became board certified hormone coach and board certified drugless practitioner. Everything that I do is because of Marley and my 2 girls. You see, I could have chosen to stay in my hospital bed. I could have chosen to kick everybody out of my room and do nothing. But instead, I decided the life that I was going to have. And I was going to show my girls how to get back up when life goes sideways. So how do hormones come into this? The brain. Pain changes gray matter. When we're hormonal, it changes gray matter. Pregnancy brain, postpartum brain, peri, menopause, postmenopause, puberty, all of that changes gray matter. This controls learning, memory retention, attention span, motor control, and coordination. So all of those women that are being diagnosed with ADHD and ADD, maybe bipolar or depression or anxiety, is it possible that the reason for the changes is because of hormonal imbalance? So one thing about hormone imbalance is that it can cause body pain. And this is how I got into it, because I actually started learning a connection. When the body is in pain, for every year that it's in pain, studies have found 11% loss of gray matter. That's equivalent to 10 to 20 years of aging, depending on how well you're aging. So the longer that body pain exists, the more gray matter is lost. And this is important to remember. Here's a ninja knowledge right here. So connecting the two, okay? You have to decide that you're the boss. You have to decide that it's okay that the body is in pain, but you're still going to do the things that you know you need to do to make it get better. 1 month after the collision, I wheeled into that physio room and they told me to move my legs. And I laughed and I said, I can't lift my legs. And they said, we just want you to try. Let me tell you, even the thought, even the idea of like engaging that quadricep, engaging that hip and those abdominals to lift the leg was painful, but I did it. So, what are you telling the body? How are you talking to your body? I did not say this stupid leg, because if I talk to the body that way, that is a message that it is a useless leg. And the brain is powerful, that it will make it a useless leg. So there's a difference between challenging the body and hurting the body. And are you listening to the body? Do you know when you're challenging and when you're hurting? Do you know what your body is saying? So change the pain, change the hormones. Hormones and nutrition play their part in recovery. So 75% of hormonal studies are done on men. 25% are done on women and animals, because we're the same apparently. This is why when we go for standard blood work, everything comes back normal. This is why it takes 5 to 7 years to diagnose us with a hormonal imbalance, because they're using tests that are designed for men and animals. Women are on a 24 to 42 day cycle. Men are on a 24-hour cycle. This is why we are inconsistent lab rats to study, because not one of us is the same. So I don't get angry at the medical system. The medical system saved my life, and I have my legs because of it. And I'm like, I can sort of jump, right? Which they said I would never do. But where the medical system is failing is when it's coming to hormonal imbalance. That can be through puberty, that can be from fertility, that can be throughout pregnancy. Then we add in postpartum, menopause, postmenopause. We're ruled by our hormones. So we have to become good listeners. We have to learn how our body is communicating with us so that we can interpret that and do better. So we know that pain is felt more when estrogen drops rapidly. This is luteal phase and menstrual phase. Okay, this is why we get uncomfortable. This is why we get agitated. This is why women get diagnosed with some type of inflammation disease, because their body's in pain. Men, when testosterone drops and your estrogen rises, you will feel more pain. And this is called andropause. So we actually do a role reversal. So women go into menopause and men go into andropause. Okay, so our testosterone starts rising, men's estrogen starts rising. Imbalance of estrogen and progesterone increases pain and creates inflammation. Menopause. This affects the adrenals, which then affects cortisol, which also means more pain, more brain fog, more fatigue, more insomnia, more chronic, like I could sleep for 20 years and it wouldn't make a difference. You're not going crazy. You're not failing at life, and you're not imagining things. This can be treated. In actuality, in 2018, they did a study on how traumatic brain injury affects hormones. And when I say traumatic brain injury, so I know that when you lose a child, you instantly receive brain damage. And this is proven under MRIs. That same brain damage happens with spousal betrayal. So, how many have experience with that? What they find is that brain injury causes hormonal imbalance. Hormonal imbalance can mimic brain injury. They have to be treated together. You have to address the body as a whole. You cannot just do all the somatics and all the breath work and all the Reiki and all the sound baths and all the meditation and all the yoga and think you're going to be fine because you're not addressing the cellular problem, and vice versa. So the difference between a blood test and dried urine, blood tests only test the serum of the blood. They're actually not testing the blood cell itself because it will sit on the counter for maybe 20 minutes, maybe a couple hours, maybe a day. Blood is only alive for 20 minutes after it leaves the body, and then it starts dying, decaying. So they can't test the blood cell. They can only test the serum. So this means that it is a snapshot of time of that specific day, of that specific month, of where you are in your cycle. Dried urine is more comprehensive, okay? We take 4 different samples over a period of 2 days. And this tests over 27 systems that affect and are affecting our hormones. I also do DNA testing because what I learned over the process is that there are genes that are hibernating or like are a couch potato and not really doing their job correctly that can be activated. So we could be doing all of the things. We could be eating right, we could be moving right, we can be doing all the emotional work, and we can do all the cellular work. But if our genes are not working correctly because they don't have what they need to, we've just got really expensive urine. So how do you connect the two? Okay, so medications, prescriptions, and over-the-counter will actually add to inflammation in the body. So yes, I was on a lot of pain meds. Yes, I was on antidepressants. Yes, I needed those. But I also know how they affected the body. They affected the liver, they affected the heart, they affected the kidneys, and they affected the intestine. There are long-term consequences of that. So knowing what your limit is without causing harm, okay? And then when do you need to manage and when can you challenge? So these 2 images is what I was on. 2 years ago, I took the second image and they decreased. And then if you were to take that image today, I am just on those supplements. I don't need regular pain management. I don't need my antidepressant. I don't need my nerve blockers. I don't need my opioids. So urine, how does that work? So we test your estrogens, your metabolites, which is your liver, and your phase 2 metabolites, which is your colon. One of the things that I get really frustrated with is a lot of health gurus will say, treat the colon, everything starts in the gut, just get on a gut protocol and things will get better. Lies. If I look at the phase 2 metabolites, her colon is beautiful. It's working correctly. I couldn't ask to see a better colon than this. However, when I look at the phase 1 metabolites, I see her liver is pedal to the metal and is working extremely hard. And when I look at her estrogens, I see that she's leaning towards estrogen dominance. So what that's telling me is that her liver is working so hard that it has no choice but to recirculate used up hormones into her system instead of detoxifying them. And this is how you can have estrogen dominance while going through peri or menopause. This is illness, this is disease, and this can lead to cancer. I'm going to treat her accordingly. And it's not going to be by treating her colon because I could treat her colon all day long and I can't. Like, this is a beautiful colon. It's not going to help. What she needs is to be treated for her liver and her estrogens. I test, I don't guess, and I don't want you wasting your money on things that you don't know if you actually really need them or not. Connecting the two, DNA testing and urine testing. So made for you supplements takes the guesswork out, and that's what the DNA testing will do for you, okay? You're no longer guessing what's needed. So you no longer have expensive urine and wasting your money down the toilet. Literally, you're actually absorbing what you need. And then knowing enables you to advocate for yourself better with the medical field. So doctors A lot of them will not acknowledge the dried urine test because they're not trained on it and it's alternative. However, they can't argue with DNA. DNA is you through and through, and that is a proven science, signed and sealed. So knowing how you are genetically created will help you become a better advocate for yourself in the medical field. My name is Jody Hardy, and I am a board certified hormonal coach and drugless practitioner. So if you have learned something today, if I've given you value, know that nothing is permanent. There is hope. And I'd like to invite you to go to elementsofwellness.org. Click on the icon at the top right of the page and book online. You're going to click laser coaching. And in there, put in the notes any questions you may have from this presentation. This is not a sales call, okay? This is about getting you wins and figuring out some solutions that will start moving that needle so that you don't feel so crazy, so that you don't feel so out of control. Maybe you don't have body pain, but you've got brain fog, you've got fatigue, you can't retain any information, you feel like you're going crazy. You're not going crazy. This is hormonal imbalance. Pain is pain, whether it's physical, mental, or emotional. So go online, book that laser coaching call, and let's get you some wins.